Let's have a small basic introduction to web services before we move on to developing a small CRUD REST web service. Before we take up the understanding of web service, let us have a small explanation on service oriented architecture. Let's see what SOA is. Service oriented architecture is an approach in designing and implementing software applications. These applications are made up of services which can be used with other applications in a loosely coupled manner. So it's like a pattern or an approach which one has to follow while developing a software or an application, and these applications, they are of services which can interact with other services, and they are loosely coupled, which means the changes happening in one application will not make the other application modified. If that dependency is there, then we call it as tightly coupled. SOA is formed between two applications, where one application is a consumer who uses the services and the other is a provider who provides the services. Further, the provider can also be a consumer of services provided by other sources. Like, let us say an application gives some services, then we call it as a provider, and another application consumes or receives these services. Likewise, the one that is providing will also consume services from another application. So it's like an application provides services and also may receive service or consume service from some other applications. SOA is like a specification and web service is the implementation of that specifications. So SOA is like a rule which an application has to follow. When an application is following those rules, we call that application as a web service. Web services are applications that work or communicate between a client and a server over a network. So these web services, they are a server side application, and some client interacts with these service. This communication over a network is possible using the HTTP protocol. A client or server can pass or receive information or data in XML, JSON formats, and these are the most commonly used formats, and also text. We can use text also, but because we are developing web service and we want to write an Angular client, we'll see our web service passing data in JSON format, but XML format is also used or valid. Like when a web service interacts with another web service, we mostly go for XML formatted data. The main advantage of working with web services is they provide interoperability, which means the applications has no limitations such as platform dependency, languages used, or any technologies involved in the development will not restrict them while communicating. Interoperability in general terms, what we can say is, like if I develop a web service that is used or that is developed in .NET, another web service that is developed in Java, these two web services can communicate with each other. There is no restriction. Like .NET developed web service will only communicate with a .NET developed another web service. No, a .NET developed web service can interact or communicate with a Java developed web service. That is possible. And also the Java developed web service can be deployed on a Unix or Linux platform, whereas the .NET developed web service is deployed on Windows. Yet though they are on different operating systems, the communication is possible. That is what we mean by interoperability. Switching of a client to a server or server to a client can be easily done without any major code changes, which means they are loosely coupled. So loosely coupled means let us say a web service has a new requirement in it and is done with that implementation. Now another web service that is consuming it may not need similar changes in it. Like, it's not completely dependent on the changes happening on that web service. Such a thing is called as loosely coupled applications. And we have types of web services. There are two different types of web services. SOAP use XML formatted data on HTTP post methods for exchanging data, and RESTful use both XML, JSON and text also formatted data on HTTP. All methods get, put, post, delete, all these are available on RESTful, and we'll be seeing, going further, we'll see the usage of RESTful web services. Any language has to follow two different standards to handle the web service, and in Java the standards are JAX-WS, Java API for XML web service, and JAX-RS, Java API for RESTful web services. So we'll be seeing RESTful web services using Spring Boot. Now let's see what RESTful web services are. RESTful, or REST, stands for Representational State Transfer, or RESTful web services, is introduced by Roy Fielding. As REST is a type of web service, it is involved with a provider and a consumer. So we know what the providers are and consumers are. Like, you make your web service, a provider, and another web service or a client consumes it, or you make a web service as a consumer and it consumes data from another web service. So relies on stateless and client server architecture and uses HTTP protocol. The state is maintained by the browser but not by the server. So here state means data of the client. Earlier it was sessions that we used to maintain on the server, but now these web services, or the REST web services, are stateless. They don't maintain the information related to the client. Instead, client has or uses the local storage and stores client's information in it. Now if you know JWT, JSON web tokens, they hold all the information related to the client name, if he's an admin, or like all the information is stored in JWT, and a server simply returns a JWT, and the client holds or manages with the JWT, but server is not aware of the information of the client. So that's what we mean by stateless. An advantage of RESTful web service is interoperability, which we saw, which means an application developed in any technology like Java, .NET, running on any platform like Unix, Windows, iOS, can communicate with another application running on a different platform. Again, a Java Unix installed web service communicating with a Windows installed web service and developed using any technology. This communication is possible for a formatted data. When we interact with the web service, we use certain URLs. So that we'll see what URI is. Uniform Resource Identifiers uniquely identify a particular resource to perform the CRUD operations. We'll see what resource are in detail. A URL, Uniform Resource Locator, looks something like this: http://www.coding365days.com/API/courses ? Start equal to 1 and limit equal to 5. This is a URL, a complete URL, which we will be regularly seeing in our day-to-day web usage, described as, and we have, if we divide this entire URL into parts, then we'll see these number of points to understand. HTTP is the protocol. Earlier we used to have FTP, file transfer protocol, wherein you can simply transfer file from one machine to another machine. Now we are using HTTP as a protocol. Subdomain is www and the website name is coding365days.com. This is my website, and the URI we are trying to communicate with is API/courses. It can be API/trainers, it can be API/customers, users, anything. Query string, and we are passing information. We want to start from 1 or 1 to 5. These are the courses we are trying to retrieve. Or like later on we may say 6 to 10. We are trying to retrieve courses that start from 6 and end till 10. So this all we'll see. We'll try to develop such a URI in our web service. And HTTP methods, we will be using these methods just like any other software. REST web service also performs CRUD, create, read, update and delete operations with HTTP methods. Like the web service that we develop modify database. They modify in the sense we can update existing records, we can create new records, we can delete records, we can read the records. When you perform these 4 operations on a database, the application that you are working with is called as a CRUD performing application. And we perform these 4 operations or CRUD operations with the HTTP methods like get, put, post and delete. You can use get for 2 things. When you say get method and the URI you pass is /courses/1, you are getting one single course. It can be /courses/2, then you are getting the details of second course, /course/10, then you are getting the details of 10th course. Or when you simply say get /courses, you are getting all courses available. When you say put or update, you are trying to update course 1. You use the method put and you pass the URI as /courses/1, which means you are trying to update this course. This is the ID of the course actually. Now here I have simply taken one. As per the application, the ID of a particular record can be anything. Likewise, post is to insert a new course. Delete deletes a particular course that you have to mention. Again, you need to pass the ID. These are the methods that are used by a client that communicates with a web service. So our Angular application will be using all these URIs. It passes information by using these URIs, and the web service receives that information and performs particular action. And that action is it to get, is it to insert, is it to insert, or is it to update, or is it to delete? Formats. REST support 3 types of data formats, like client passing information to a web service. Information in what format? There are 3 formats that a client or a web service, or 3 formats a web service can receive. These days clients are JSON or JavaScript related technologies. What clients are developed, whatever client that you work on, they are with the JavaScript related technology like a React or a Vue.js or AngularJS. No matter what front-end technology you say, they are JavaScript related technology. So they only understand JSON. But when you use XML or when you make your web service return XML related data, that data is not consumed by a JavaScript related application, because JavaScript related applications or Angular application or React application, they only understand JSON. So make your web service return JSON formatted data only. But what if my web service has to communicate with another web service? Then make your web service return XML formatted data. XML is used when a web service communicates with another web service, and JSON is used when a web service communicates with a JavaScript related front-end application like Angular or React. And text is used when a web service communication is done, wants to send a video or an audio or a pic. You use the text formatted, but we'll be seeing much in JSON formatted data, because we develop a web service that responds in JSON related data, and that is consumed by an Angular application. So we'll be seeing much into JSON related formatted data. The advantage of multiple formats is a web service once developed can be consumed by different applications that can handle different formats. So for our course, I've selected JSON formatted data. I'll create a web service that returns JSON formatted data, but the same web service can be used to return XML formatted data as well. So it's not like if you want to work with XML data, then write another web service, or if you want to work with JSON web related data, then write another web service. No, you write one single web service and make that pass JSON formatted data, and make the same web service pass XML formatted data, and the consumers would be XML. When it is XML, the consumer would be another web service, and when you are passing JSON formatted data, the consumer would be a JS front-end framework like Angular. MIME stands for Multi-Purpose Internet Mail Extension and indicates the format of the message or content that is being exchanged between client and server. When you pass data or when you exchange data between client and server, then you have to follow this standard, MIME standard, and you use these things: type, subtype, or type, HTML, plain, application JSON, XML. These are certain standards you need to follow when you are exchanging data between two applications like the client and server. Text, HTML or plain are used while returning info to client so that the client can render. Like when you are receiving information, if it is a client understands only HTML and normal or plain text. So the client should receive HTML so that it can render it on the browser. When you say application JSON or application XML are used in REST clients while clients receiving the data. We use a client called as Postman to test our web service. Therein we will be seeing the usage of application/JSON. And headers, yes, web services also need certain headers. When a HTTP request is sent with some data, the details are included in an HTTP request body and is structured in JSON format. Like let us say an Angular application is passing some information to the web service, an Angular application wants to insert some data, a user's data or a course related data into a database. So this web service receives all that information in JSON formatted data along with a header. Once a server receives this information, it should be able to convert it into a Java object. So you receive JSON formatted data because client is JavaScript related technology and understands only JSON, and you pass information in JSON format, and your web service receives that JSON formatted data. But Java objects are not like same as like JSON objects or JavaScript objects. They have their own objects. Pojo classes, what I mean. So this conversion is needed, but to do that, server side code should know the format JSON of the data that has come in as a request. So your web service should be able to handle both Java object as well as the JavaScript object, which is JSON JavaScript object notation. To make the server know the type of data, the request should carry the type of data. Similarly, when a server responds with some data to a client, server has to mention the type or format of the data being sent. To do this, we use HTTP headers. So a web service should be able to understand what type of data it is receiving, and also should mention the details of what type of data it is sending. And to perform this, these are the headers that we should be using. Okay, so this all we'll see in while developing a web service. And also, to make an Angular application communicate with the web service, you need to write a separate class. That we'll see when we start all these in practical.